session. For anyone that would like a recording of the video afterwards, please do let me know, and we'll be happy to send that out to the group. Today, we're very proud to be hosting a very special webinar on airports going green and how they're managing carbon in the airport world. So this is a Transforming Leadership webinar series that's the Sustainability Management Association hosts, and you can reach us on any of our handles here, and my email address is here directly for you as well. And I welcome you to today's call. Just to give you a little bit of information about us, we are an organization for people who are interested in really transforming how we lead our organizations to manage for triple bottom line, to manage for people, planet, and profit. And we are members who believe in innovation and technology, that we can widely disseminate the knowledge, skills, and abilities needed to successfully manage for sustainability management. Our vision is that sustainability management will become a norm, that managers in all industries will automatically manage for triple bottom line, not just for profit, but also for people and planet. We offer 3 services, just to give you an overview of the Sustainability Management Association. The first is membership, and that this is the best professional network for sustainability professionals. And we're also the accrediting body for the certification. The higher tier with people that have 2 years of work experience. So I'm just going to mute the audience, and I'll be right back with you. Thank you for your patience. Okay, and I hope you can hear me. We're the accrediting body for the certification. It comes in 2 tiers. The higher tier of the certified professional are for people who have 2 years of work experience in some fashion in sustainability, whether you're in marketing and you're in product development or packaging, or whether you're in human resources and you're setting up benefit wellness programs, or whether you're an environmental manager and you're working on your energy, your water, your waste, or whether you're a safety professional with EHS&S, or whether you're facilities management, and so on and so on. We truly believe that sustainability management is how we do our job. And the second tier is for the Sustainability Management Certified Associate, and those are people who are learning or would like to learn about sustainability. For today's webinar, we do offer continuing education credits. So for your existing certifications, if you would like to receive a 1-hour certificate for today's training, this can be done by just emailing me. So please feel free to let us know if you would like a CEU, and then just email me and I'll email one right back to you. Our members, just to give you a feel, we're located in many states across the United States. If anyone's on the call today that can help us to fill in one of these boxes, we'd really appreciate it. Not sure if anyone is on the call from the Midwest or Maine today, but that would really help round us out. But we're members from all across the United States and from 18 countries around the world, and every single one of our members are doing something amazing to make a positive impact in the world today. And we truly believe that certified sustainability managers will lead organizations with strategies that ensure a healthy society, environment, and economy, because we're truly vested that tomorrow is much greater than today. And so what we're trying to do for our membership is to create a study guide for the certification. That study guide is a very practical tool set for people to learn about sustainability quickly, that they can learn a very detailed information such as the metrics that you need for managing energy, water, waste projects of that nature, and then how to develop your target goals and your key performance indicators to actually measure your success. The study guide will also cover a lot of information about the basic data analysis that is done to be able to report your KPIs for social, environmental metrics. And those are really helpful to the organization's stakeholders to know how are you achieving sustainability and where are your outcomes and how have they been achieved. It does really focus on solving sustainability through partnerships, and we do have a very good chapter on supply chain management. be able to work with your partners to solve problems together, because oftentimes, for say, I may have a packaging material that I can't recycle when I receive it from my supplier, so I can work with my supply chain to be able to come up with joint solutions. It covers areas such as third-party certifications as well in the study guide to be able to help people understand what does USDA organic mean and what is the chain of custody and how do organizations go through that process, just in case your organization would like to achieve certification or sell products and goods on your shelves that have that certification so that you and your employees also know what those mean. So it's a comprehensive guide, but it was built by professionals for professionals to be very useful, practical, and a guide that you can use today. If you're interested in learning about sustainability, this study guide also has the license to take the certification exam. And on our website, you would find it under our certification exam page under a hyperlink to the publisher for the study guide. So we encourage you to check us out. We encourage you to think about getting certified because our certified professionals are changing the world, and we definitely would like to invite you to join us as a part of a membership of people who are truly making a positive difference around the world as well. We believe in not only transforming ourselves as managers, but also really developing the field of sustainability management so that people are very recognizing that we can make a difference by knowing what is our environmental impact, our social impact, and working to make that better. And so our guest speakers today are doing this on a daily basis. And I'm very proud to introduce you to 3 guest speakers. First is Rob Freeman. He's the environmental manager for Los Angeles World Airports. And he's joined by Chris Russell, the environmental program manager of Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. And also joining us today as a guest speaker is Chad Reese, the environmental affairs manager for San Diego County Regional Airport Authority. During the call, we ask that you please type in any questions or feedback that you have for the speakers into the chat box. We'll be reviewing those during the call. And then at the end of the call, we'll hold a Q&A session and discussion session for you to be able to ask any questions that you may have. And if you'll just give me one moment to switch over to the presentation slides, and I'll be right with you. Okay, can you see my screens there, Rob? And let me unmute you, Rob. Sorry, just a moment, please. Rob, I'm just unmuting you now. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see the screen. Thank you.
Great. Okay, thank you so much, and I'll turn the presentation over to you.
Thank you, Angela. I appreciate the opportunity to speak on the subject today, and I'll cue you for the slide advance. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, well, today's presentation is called Airports on a Carbon Diet, how the Airport Carbon Accreditation Program works. And if you could advance the slide. Thanks. And as Angela mentioned, my name is Robert Freeman from LA World Airports. And when we were putting this program together, we decided to share an aspect of environmental performance that many people may not be necessarily familiar with. However, nearly everyone has experienced a plane trip, and most have been to an airport at one point or another. Now, the aviation community has long been engaged in addressing the impacts of air travel. Noise is perhaps the first issue you might think of when thinking about aircraft, and historically, black smoke has regularly been seen coming out of engines of jet airliners. Technology has advanced in the years since the first jet-age airports and jet aircraft were introduced. Because air travel continues to grow, the carbon footprint of the aviation sector is actually quite substantial. So let me point out to you some aspects of what airlines doing to reduce their carbon footprint. Then the rest of the presentation will look at what airports are doing to go on a carbon diet. Next slide, please. So we'll start with the international perspective because airline and aircraft travel is an international endeavor, to be sure. The International Civil Aviation Organization is the worldwide body that generally regulates air travel. Now, in 2000, there were findings that were related to aviation emissions in a document called the Intergovernmental. And there were a couple of important points that came out of this study. There are estimates of climate effects of contrails that were adjusted to be about 3% of what the total anthropogenic radiative forcing by all human activities is. And essentially what that means is that 3% of the change in the climate due to what people are doing could be attributed to the aviation sector. The total carbon dioxide in aviation emissions is approximately 2% of all the global greenhouse gas emissions. The total CO2 emissions from aviation is expected to grow around 3 or 4% per year. Now, the medium-term mitigation for carbon dioxide emissions for the sector could potentially be from improved fuel efficiency. This would include new aircraft design and other technology. But even with all of that technology, there are going to be increases in CO2 aviation. Now, the goal for the airlines and the aircraft growth by 2020. Now, this graph, actually, Chris Russell has a much better graph.
Excuse me, Rob. Your microphone
Yes.
is a little bit fuzzy, and so I didn't know if you wouldn't mind repeating the last sentence that you had just spoken.
Certainly. So can you hear me now? The goal of carbon neutral growth in the aviation sector is to be achieved by 2020.
Yes, I can hear you really well. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Chris Russell will have a much better slide than this one because his graph looks a lot better than mine. But essentially what you can see here in this graph is that on the bottom is years moving forward into the future, and to move into the future, if nothing from aircraft activity will increase substantially. The red on the graph is the reductions that can be had from operational improvements that aircraft can achieve. The blue is the potential reduction from aircraft technology, everything from winglets to carbon fiber airframes, better materials in aircraft manufacture and operations. And there's a big reduction that is counted on by the use of sustainable alternative fuels and also market-based measures. And so this would be replacing petroleum-based fuel with sustainable alternatives and also entering into market-based reductions, credits, tax measures. These are all tools that are available and anticipated to be applied to reducing the carbon footprint for the aviation sector. The green line is the anticipated carbon neutral growth goal. Starting with 2020, all of these tools will be put to bear to achieve that goal, moving on into the future. Next slide. Well, Los Angeles International Airport, that's my airport, and LA World Airports runs 2 airports, LAX and Van Nuys General Aviation Airport. Quickly, some of the aspects about these 2 airports. achieve sustainability are that it has the largest alternative fuel vehicle in the U.S. We feature more than 100 passenger vehicle, electric vehicle chargers in service now. We have a ground service equipment policy that features low emissions. One aspect for LAX is more than 15 million gallons of sustainable jet fuel is used between 2015 and 2018. I'll talk a little bit more about that. We're in a big construction mode to feature light rail connections, automated people movers, and consolidated rent-a-cars that are on its way. Achievement for LAX is reaching the Airport Carbon Accreditation Level 3, and the Airport Carbon Accreditation will be explained more by Chris and Chad as we go on, but this is one achievement for this airport that we're all very proud of, and as we're actively achieving some carbon reduction goals. Van Nuys Airport, I'll mention very quickly that is actually the first airport carbon accredited general aviation airport in the U.S. So a general aviation airport is one that doesn't have commercial service, but has maybe a lot of propeller planes and also a lot of small jet aircraft. This would be business aircraft primarily that don't carry regular commercial service. Van Nuys Airport is committed to reduce emissions by 5% from 2013 by 2025. Next slide, please. I mentioned the sustainable aviation fuel for the airlines to achieve their carbon neutral goals. And so at LAX, we were the first U.S. airport to host United Airlines, being the first airline to have a sustainable aviation fuels incorporated into normal business operation. And so it wasn't really until 2016 that we have this featured, looking very bright, for the application of sustainable aviation fuels incorporated into regular airline service. Today at LAX, the SAF, or sustainable aviation fuel, is blended into the jet fuel supply. And that's an important feature for of the sustainable aviation fuel because it is nearly identical to petroleum-based fuel. So it can be blended or mixed into the fuel supply. And when we're doing that, we're reducing the carbon footprint of the total fuel supply for LAX. Called Alt Air that's nearby in Paramount, California. And
Rob,
yes,
we're losing you again. We were talking about how they're blended together with the SAF with the jet fuel, but then after that, it's getting pretty fuzzy.
Yes, let me. I think my wireless mic is probably dying. So here. How's this? How's this?
Sounds great to me right now. Thank you.
Okay, great. So let me go over again very quickly. The SAF is nearly chemically identical to petroleum-based jet fuel, so it can be blended into the general jet fuel supply, thereby reducing the carbon footprint of that fuel supply. And that's how we're looking forward to achieving some of the goals that we have laid out for LAX to reduce our carbon footprint. Just by a matter of there are different ways to get sustainable jet fuel. The feedstock that comes from our refinery is from food production waste, and so there is a feature in California called the Low Carbon Fuel Standard. It will be applied to jet fuel, and so we anticipate in the future more SAF being available to airports around the state and many airports across the country and around the world are applying strategies to increase their use of sustainable aviation fuel. Next slide, please. That was my contribution, and so I will turn it back over to you, Angela, to introduce the next speaker.
Thank you so much, Rob. I really appreciate that. LAX is a tremendously huge airport, and I'm not sure if everyone on this call has been through that airport, but you can imagine the scope of work that Rob is in charge of. And so thank you so much for that information. We do have a few questions for you to read over in the chat box if you can. And I'm going to go ahead and turn the microphone over to Chris Russell, our environmental program manager with Environmental Affairs Department at Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. And Chris, your mic is now live.
Okay, hi Angela, hi all. Thanks for joining our webinar today. And yeah, I'm going to kind of pick up where Rob left off and give you guys a little bit of a background on the Airport Carbon Accreditation Program. And then also give you guys a little insight into how we achieved carbon neutrality here at Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. So this kind of highlights what Rob was mentioning. The aviation industry has made a commitment to carbon neutral growth based on a 2005 baseline. And that graphic that Rob showed, 2020 being the year where that was the target for achieving that carbon neutral growth rate. A couple other organizations I wanted to mention on here. So the Federal Aviation Administration, which governs air traffic, they also have organizational goals related to carbon dioxide emissions reduction and very similar to the airline and industry goal for a carbon neutral growth rate beyond 2020. And then sort of a secondary statement on reducing climate impact from all aviation emissions beyond 2050. Two other organizations, Airport Council International, it's a global organization for airports, and there's a North American branch. So here in North America, so that would be the US and Canadian airports, we have a goal as part of our organization to achieve carbon neutral growth for emissions that the airport controls. So those would not be aircraft operations, but the actual emissions from our airport infrastructure. So terminals and fleets that the airport actually controls. And then what I'm about to give you guys kind of a brief overview, the Airport Carbon Accreditation Program. The goal of that body is to actually certify and recognize airports across the globe for carbon management. And so go ahead and go to the next slide, and I'll give you guys a little bit of background on what the Airport Carbon Accreditation Program is. So this graphic here is actually similar to the one Rob showed, where there's a whole range of technologies, and again illustrating that this 2020 number is where there's a whole set of measures that it's going to take to actually bring us down to that level where we're actually carbon neutral in terms of our growth. And it is a challenge considering that aviation is a growth industry. Next slide, please. So this map here shows in North America all the accredited airports and at the various levels of the accreditation program. So just as a background, there's 4 levels currently set in the program that you can be certified at. So I would say the analogy would be like a LEED certified building. You can go through various levels of certification on a building. Similar thing here to the Airport Carbon Accreditation Program. The first step is measuring and accounting for your carbon footprint, and then you progress up to actually setting goals and demonstrating a reduction at a level 2. And then you progress up to level 3, which Rob mentioned. LAX is one of the airports at level 3. They're actually going out and engaging airlines and other tenant stakeholders to also measure and they're not responsible, but goal being to reduce those airline and tenant emissions as well. And then the final step of the program is for an airport, after everything else is done, you go and you offset your direct emissions as well as your indirect emissions from electricity use at the end of the year to achieve a net zero. Next slide, please. So this graphic here just illustrates the entire program is a wheel, and if you progress through the levels, looking at level 1, 2, 3, and 3 plus, really what I want to show here is that there's a set of actions that airports at these levels have to undertake every single year to remain certified. And so again, going back to the initial phases of the program, you have to have a policy in place, a set of procedures to actually implement that policy. You go and you conduct a measurement of all of your emissions. You actually seek and get a third-party independent company to come in and verify your calculations and your measurements. And then, of course, you need to be able to show each year you have an executive commitment to those actions. And then as you progress up, you have to have a plan. For us, we use a sustainability management plan that incorporates both energy and emissions and carbon reduction into that overall sustainability plan. And then you have to have a goal set as part of that. So in our case, we have a 3% annual reduction goal overall. And so each year we're trying to demonstrate that we've achieved a 3% reduction compared to the prior year. And then I mentioned the third-party independent verifier. That audit that comes in to verify your program, that audit is looking to see, are you truly demonstrating continuous improvement? And then as you progress up into the level 3 and beyond levels, you have to expand. I mentioned that measurement to all of your tenants and the airlines on your airport. So the biggest source, obviously, for an airport would be aircraft operations. So we do have to measure and report that. And then we have to have engagement with those stakeholders and show that we're making meaningful progress. And then again, that last final step is the offsetting piece. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. So next, please. So just another graphic to illustrate that we have to do all of these things to become ultimately carbon neutral, which is to measure every metric ton of emissions directly that come from a tailpipe on a vehicle, that come from a smokestack on your utility plant, as well as every megawatt hour of electricity that you use. Those all have to be measured and calculated. And then you have to demonstrate a reduction in both energy and in emissions. And then you have to go through, and I mentioned partnering. You have to have a set of partnerships in place to show that you're broadly managing it within the boundary of your airport. And then again, the final step is for all those remaining emissions and electricity, you go through a process of offsetting all those through renewable energy certificates or certified carbon offsets. Next, please. And then this is a key performance indicator that is used as part of the program globally. And in the last annual report that was published in the summer of last year, these are actually the numbers that came out of each region globally. And then I just simply put DFW there to show kind of where we're at in terms of global and key performance indicator. So it's in kilograms of carbon per passenger is the standard that we use. And so I would say what I would point to on this graphic is the European airports. The program initially started in Europe, and I would say that they're very advanced in their programs there. So that metric there, I would say, represents a large number of airports that have been doing this for many years. Compared to North America, we have 34 airports in the program. Asia Pacific has almost 40 airports, and then Africa They're one of the newer regions in the program, so there's not a whole lot of airports yet in the program. So you can kind of see a progression there of airports that have been in the program, and you can see the continuous improvement there. Next, please. So this just illustrates how we at DFW Airport achieved neutrality, and we certified to an independent auditor. So when we measured our footprint, almost 80% of all of our emissions in our carbon footprint come from our electricity use. About 11% comes from our fleet. We have a large bus fleet here at the airport, as well as other smaller vehicles that conducting day-to-day maintenance operations. And then we have a large central utility plant here that heats and cools the terminals. So the heating of our buildings is actually about 9% of our carbon footprint. And then in our case, other emissions would be, we have a large fire training research center here that we burn propane. So when you go and you assess your carbon footprint, very similar to your organization, you're looking at all fuels and all electricity consumption and translating that into the resulting carbon emissions that come from your operation. And then for us to actually certify neutrality, we actually buy 100% renewable wind power to offset that 79% piece of our footprint. And then the remaining direct emissions that come from heating facilities and come from our fleet operations, we actually buy certified carbon offsets from the U.S. Climate Action Reserve and the Verified Carbon Standard, which is a global organization that certifies and banks metric tons of certified carbon reduction. And you have to have, again, like that prior graph illustrated, for every metric ton you emit, you have to have a metric ton of certified offsets. And in our case, those actually come from methane capture from landfills in our region. Next slide, please. This just to illustrate that the success we've had here at DFW is really due to the partnerships, whether it's federal agencies like the EPA or the FAA, business organizations like American Airlines is our biggest operator here. Clean Energy is actually a company we work with on securing all of our fleet energy. And then other local organizations that we work with. That's really what's driven the success we've had. So I would say that stakeholder engagement piece that I showed prior, that's really the key to really making meaningful progress. Next slide, please. And then I just wanted to give you a little flavor for of our baseline year of 2015 compared to all of our sustainability initiatives we put in place over the past few years. The projection we have in 2 years from now is that you can see here we're literally almost inverting our fossil to renewable ratio, so that in 2020 we're going to be more than 3/4 of all of our energy. So that's electricity and fuel, transportation fuels, and heating fuel. 75% of all of that is going to come from renewables once all of our initiatives are fully implemented by 2020. Next slide, please. And then what I want to illustrate here is just that as we prioritize all of our actions and our commitment to reducing carbon, very similar to the waste and recycling industry, and that you see, using less of fuel or electricity would be the top priority. Becoming more efficient and optimizing how we're using it would be the next tier down, and then going to either low or zero carbon fuel sources are our other priorities. And at the end of the day, once we've implemented all of those things, we do the offsetting piece to get to a net zero. So that's a little bit about how we did it, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much, Chris. That was super interesting. And you do have lots of questions and feedback in the chat log. If you wouldn't mind taking a look at those for our Q&A session of the webinar. And so I'm really proud to introduce you to Chad Reese. He's the Environmental Affairs Manager at the San Diego International Airport. And if you haven't been to San Diego, he probably has one of the best jobs in the entire world. Just my opinion. Just my opinion, Chad. And just give me 1 second, Chad. Let me go ahead and unmute you. You are unmuted now. And thank you so much for guest speaking with us today.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, and I second that. I think this is, I am in a very ideal situation, and literally, this is my dream job. So, very happy to be here today. Very happy to be at San Diego Airport, and you heard from my colleagues. Enjoy the industry is an amazing industry. So, yeah, success all around. I am one of two environmental affairs managers at San Diego Airport. We split up the environmental affairs department really in regulatory compliance and then environmental sustainability. So I'm the sustainability lead and work closely with my compliance brethren. So on this slide, intro that there are a number of animations that you could just start to click through. San Diego International Airport is a 51-gate large hub airport. So we now serve over 22 million passengers annually. We are the busiest single runway airport in the United States. We are confined to a humble 661 acres, and in the Q&A, Rob and Chris can demonstrate the size of their footprints. Next question. And we're expecting 50% passenger growth by 2035. And so toward that, we are embarking on what we call our airport development plan, which is a very major build out that will carry us to capacity, which is 2035, where we are rebuilding Terminal 1. And to support that process, we're in the middle of migrating a whole lot of support facilities. So if you're flying into San Diego or out of the next 7 years, please get here early and anticipate to see a lot of construction. Next slide. So before I get into any particular measures at San Diego Airport, I want to call out our unique definition of sustainability. And this definition was created by our executive team and board of directors about 2 years ago. And to read it, it's to plan and build an enduring and resilient customer-focused enterprise by effectively managing our financial, social, and environmental risks, obligations, and opportunities. If you can advance that one, please, Angela. I want to call out enduring and resilient, which is very important to the airports in terms of being able to manage regional transportation event of natural or man-made disasters. We recognize that we are a key component in regional activities. I also want to point out, as everyone on this call knows, that the triple bottom line of financial, social, and environmental, just acknowledging that a truly successful enterprise incorporates all three of these aspects. Next slide. So we really, when we talk about sustainability at the airport, we talk about this arc of sustainability that really has its foundation in 2008, when we were one of the first large airports in the nation with a formal sustainability policy. And this policy is aligned with aviation, and it uses a framework. If you look at the first letter of each of those words, it's the EON framework. And that's now simply the triple bottom line of sustainability. Fuel advance one. Also in 2008, San Diego Airport signed a memorandum of understanding with the Attorney General of California that committed us to emissions reductions wherever we can at the airport, and that's led to a host of achievements, including some listed below, which include a policy of LEED certification of silver or better for all new construction projects. And to date, since this commitment, all of our new construction projects have received LEED gold or better. We also are working to convert all ground transportation vehicles. We now have a 100% alternative fuel fleet in terms of our shuttles, et cetera, and I can get into what those fuels are in the Q&A. We are also in the process of electrifying ground support equipment, as Rob called out in some of his pictures. San Diego Airport has 25% electric ground support equipment, and we're doing everything we can to build out new electric vehicle support equipment, or EVSE, to incentivize our tenants, airfield tenants, to bring more electric equipment. In fact, one project that we're working with our local utility is anyone in California may know the Senate Bill 350. To not get into that bill, but via a grant from our Public Utilities Commission, we're able to build out at the cost of the utility a lot of electric vehicle chargers airside that will support new GSE. And all of our gates have landside power and preconditioned air units. This is really important for airports because that means that airplanes aren't running their auxiliary power units when they're at the gates. They're actually plugged into our power, which I'll get into in a minute. Is one of the greenest grid delivered power in the nation. Next slide, please. Or next stop. As all of you on this call are familiar with, I'm sure, the Global Reporting Initiative. In 2011, San Diego Airport published the first sustainability report using the GRI framework, which committed us to this to sustainability performance tracking and transparency. We do a lot of stakeholder engagement around our sustainability report. As a matter of fact, I was here at 7 a.m. this morning to do a presentation to one of our first shift teams. And if you go to sustain.san.org, you can see our 2016 report. Within the next 2 weeks, we plan to publish our 2017 report that's using calendar year 2017 data. Next slide, please. So we've heard a lot about airport carbon accreditation. So far, I'll go into it a little more in the next slides, but San Diego Airport joined this framework in 2016, and I unfortunately just lost power on my monitor, so if you'll bear with me one moment.
You got
Okay,
all the electricity and batteries and all that. That was really quick. Go ahead.
It's the computer I'm on. I'm in a conference room, and the computer went to sleep because I hadn't touched it in a while. Okay, I'm back. So our airport carbon accreditation, as Chris mentioned, the different levels. We are now certified at level 2, which is the reduction. We have done a lot of stakeholder engagement, and we're primed to get to the next level. We're officially, per our board, planning to go to level 3+, which is the carbon neutrality by 2022, but we'll be there much sooner. If you could advance one. So in 2017, San Diego Airport and a host of other airports signed the Airport Sustainability Declaration, which uses the United Nations Sustainable Development Framework. And so that commits us to further collaboration, transparency, innovation, and engagement. If you'll advance one. And finally, we are in the midst of creating a suite of plans under our sustainability management planning via some funding from the FAA. We've already developed 2 of these plans, the Strategic Energy Plan and Water Stewardship Plan. I'll talk more of those in a moment. We are also developing 5 other plans that'll build out this portfolio. We're currently in the midst of a clean transportation and air quality and emissions plan. Fiscal year 2019 will address zero waste and climate resilience. And in 2020, we will produce a biodiversity plan. These are all these plans are very dynamic. We look at them through the lens of energy and resource savings and risk aversion. And all of the material that's part of these plans inform our 5 and 20-year capital improvement plans. For instance, we're in the process of securing a vendor for a battery energy storage system at the airport, which was called out in our strategic energy plan. Next slide. So to speak a little more about this plan, and Angela, if you could advance one more. So if you go to san.org.green, you can download the strategic energy plan and also our water stewardship plan. What this picture, this graphic is showing is how we think about our energy mix going out to, really the final build out of the airport. We currently have 5.5 megawatts of solar at San Diego Airport. As I mentioned, we are in the process of securing a vendor for our 2 megawatts, 4 megawatt hour battery storage system. We are also targeting very heavily energy efficiency. I mentioned a lot of new building construction, so this is a great opportunity for us to go much deeper than code and head towards net zero with our new construction and operations, and in other fuel mixes there as well. You'll please advance. On the water stewardship plan, this is all about managing our resources more efficiently and effectively. We are right on the bay, as you may recall from that picture that you saw. And so the water stewardship plan really addresses how we are trying to find appropriate uses of our water, collecting water wherever we can. We are about ready to open a new Terminal 2 parking plaza that has embedded a water catchment system that has the ability to capture 100,000 gallons of water, capture and store 100,000 gallons of water, and the ability to process 2 million gallons of water annually. And that system is right next to our central utility plant. So the captured water from rain events is able to be utilized in our central utility plant. So that's an example of using non-potable water for non-potable end uses. And what you see in front of you here is a pilot project that we started about a year ago, where we noticed air conditioning condensate drippings on the airfield. And so we started putting these 55-gallon drums under the jet bridges to capture that air conditioning condensate water. And last year, 2017, we calculated back of envelope that we captured approximately just over 100,000 gallons of water that year. And so then we look for appropriate end uses for this captured water, including construction dust control, power washing sidewalks, etc. And more recently, we secured a grant through the San Diego Foundation and Clean Tech San Diego, where we are installing sensors on these barrels, so we can determine in real time appropriate uses for that water, and so that's moved around as we need to. We're turning dumb buckets of water smart, if you will, with this real-time tracking. Next slide. So regarding our emissions, as Chris alluded, the elephant in the room is really the airplanes that utilize our airports. And on the left, you'll see that we are at level 2 of the airport carbon accreditation, heading very quickly up that ladder, if you will. And on the right, you can see our scopes 1, 2, and 3 breakdown on the top. You can see that 94% of our operations on the airport are scope 3. And then if you look just below that of the breakdown by type, you can see that, really in this case, it's again, the aircraft is 67% of all of our emissions at the airport. So next slide. One way that we're trying to address this is via creative innovation like the Good Traveler, which is a carbon offset program that was developed and launched here at San Diego Airport. About a year ago, we developed a request for proposals for a third-party administrator to take the Good Traveler nationally. And to date, we have 11 partner airports that are part of the Good Traveler, Dallas-Fort Worth being one of them. Rob, anytime you want to connect and talk about this, we're happy to have you join us. Collectively, we have over 420 million annual passengers, and that includes everyone from Seattle, Tacoma to the Port Authority of New York, New Jersey. We're covering a lot of ground. We've offset so far 23 million air miles via the Good Traveler. And so if you go to thegoodtraveler.org, you can offset. We encourage you to offset your individual emissions for your trips. We're also using this program to offset conferences, which Chris Russell can speak to, and other opportunities like San Diego specific building and staff offsetting. And there's a whole lot more that I can speak to, but in the interest of time, if you'll advance one more, please, Angela. I really wanted to bound this in the scope of our renewable energy. What you see here, you're looking from the west to the east, and you see a whole lot of solar on the rooftops, and then that parking, ground parking on the right. We're very excited about what we're doing here at the San Diego Airport, and we're really excited to have colleagues like Rob and Chris to work on these big issues together. So thanks for your time.
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation, and I'm really glad we had some time to cover some of San Diego's efforts in water management and energy management, as well as the carbon. There's so much that you do, and bringing in 3 speakers at one time doesn't give you justice as to the amazing feats that you've been able to accomplish over the year. Would any of you like to tell us about what are some of your proudest achievements that you've had? I mean, it's definitely a huge achievement of mine to see that you're all at level 3, San Diego level 2 on their way to level 3. And so that's really, truly an amazing feat. I'm very proud of you. Or you can answer some questions, whichever you prefer. Rob, do you want to go first? I'm going to actually unmute you. That would probably be helpful. Okay, we're unmuting Chris. And Rob. Chad, you...
Okay, great. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Thanks, Rob.
Great. Let me quickly run through some of the questions that I think some were addressed to me. The composting waste, organic waste at LAX is managed and under the advisement of the Bureau of Sanitation. So we're working with our city partners to develop programs. Other airports have developed much more aggressive composting programs. And so that's a whole part that you could explore and would take some time, but LAX is on its way. The blend of low carbon fuel standard fuel, so the sustainable jet fuel you can have as much as 50% of sustainable jet fuel on board in a blend on an aircraft at a time. That is the current ASTM standard, and that is the current maximum. Now, in practice at LAX, we're only getting 5 million gallons of sustainable jet fuel per year from our refinery that is nearby. That is blended into 2 billion gallons per year. So you can see that the ratio is not very, very much, but we are just at the beginning of commercial application of sustainable jet fuel. So that percentage will continue to increase, and airports across the country and around the world are spending time to figure out how they can get more sustainable jet fuel into the fuel supply. Our 5% goal at Van Nuys Airport of reducing emissions, we got a long ways to go because we need really more electric vehicles, other measures like more energy efficient buildings. This is all in the works, and we're on our way for that, and we have the goal in front of us. As far as other pollutants that come out of jet aircraft, so nitrogen oxide is one that comes out, NOx. Sulfur oxide is another one. Black carbon, VOCs, particulate matter, and ultrafine particles all contribute to emissions from jet engines. And the last one is sustainability message. Yet there is a big opportunity for all the passengers to receive sustainability messages. And if you go to airports, several airports do have very good programs to communicate their sustainability elements to the public. It is a airport by airport effort right now. There's a lot of challenge to try and engage the public on a common level, but organizations like Airport Council International, which I'm a member of, and Chris and Chad are as well, we work together to try and solve those problems. And that's all.
Thank you so much, Rob. I really enjoy learning a lot from you. You know, you had said that, I don't remember if it was Chris or Rob that was talking about how you're tracking all of the travelers coming in and out of the airport to try to get a handle on what are scope 1 greenhouse gases just from people traveling to and from. Do you use a tape, or how are you measuring that, or is it an estimation that you use, or it sounds very complex to me?
I can take a shot at Rob if you want.
Yeah, Chris, go ahead.
Actually, Chris, your acreage at what is the acreage at Dallas Fort Worth? Because we were just there, and it took us 10 minutes to take the bus from the terminal to the car rental area.
It's almost 18,000 acres,
Wow.
like 30 square miles. So yeah, it's a big. There are some airports that are cover a lot of land mass for sure, and we're definitely one of those. So
just quickly on that, 18,000 acres versus 661 at San Diego Airport.
That's why I said you have the perfect job and the most perfect job in the world.
But I don't have the view that Chad does, and I'm glad his slide is still up, because that's a much more beautiful view than I have.
Not bad.
But so on how we go about the measurement piece. So and we probably all do this very similar way. So airports have really good data on things that we directly control. So I mean, we know how much fuel we buy and use. We know how much electricity we buy and use. So that's we have really good data for that. When we get to things like the emissions coming from passengers that drive their vehicles or take hotel shuttles or taxis to and from our airports, that's where we have to get into the estimation methods. So we do have some tools that we use to estimate. As an example, this program, Airport Council International, has a tool that you can use that you can type in, the number of passengers that drive to and from your airport, and you could do like the average distance to the city center to your airport. And there's definitely some ways that some of your carbon footprint is definitely estimated for those things that you don't have really good data on. And so, it's a pretty complex inventory for an airport. We're very much like cities. We have temporary, millions of temporary residents versus permanent residents, but there's a lot of different activities. And so, the things that we control, we definitely have really good, solid calculations for, just like you would at your organization. And then we estimate those other things that we don't have really good data for.
Thank you so much, Chris. And that is really important that today there's so many more tools available than when you all got started in 2007 and 2008, that the Airport Council International can kind of give you some metrics that you can work with that you wouldn't absolutely lose a lot of sleep over. So thank you. I know Ryan S. had a lot of great questions about what percentage of an on-site airport vehicles are electric or fuel. And I know that San Diego was talking about that quite a bit, and the EV chargers that they were able to put in place. But Chad, did you want to? I'm not sure if that question, Ryan, was for Chad.
Yeah, I can speak to that, and then Chris and Rob could certainly chime in.
Thanks.
So it really depends on what fleet of vehicles or what vehicle use you're talking about. I mentioned our shuttles, which are alternative fuel vehicles, 100% alternative fuel. We currently don't have any electric buses in the mix, but we are in the process of securing a few electric buses for landside activities. We're about 25% electric on the air side, as I mentioned. And then the authority has a policy of right-sizing vehicles for different departments and teams around the airport. For instance, when it's time for the fleet manager to procure new vehicles, there's a lot of effort that goes into making sure that it's an appropriate use, that the vehicle matches the use intended. For vehicles where people may be traveling a little further afield, a hybrid gas-electric vehicle may be appropriate. The environmental affairs team, we have 2 Nissan Leafs, which are 100% electric to get around and do our activities. And as more things like light-duty vehicles come online that are more appropriate for electric, things are moving that way quickly, but we're not quite there yet. So we'll just keep looking at opportunities to right size and get more electric in the mix. And I guess on the question, I just want to clarify. I see a question actually from Angela at Vimeo. So my office, I am part of the environmental affairs team, which is embedded in the planning. So we're the planning and environmental affairs department. So within the business unit of environmental affairs, there are about 10 of us that work on either sustainability or regulatory compliance. I have a couple of direct reports that work on sustainability related measures. And the airport, the authority itself has about 440 employees. The tenants and all the support staff and employees make up about 8,600 people at the airport. I do see another question for me. I'm happy to have Rob and Chris chime in on fleet vehicles. I could also speak to the water management issues that were addressed to me.
Yeah, I'll chime in real quick on, and then Rob, if you want to, on electrification of the fleet. I think airports, if you look around the nation, those airports that are in air quality areas that don't meet federal standards, such as, unfortunately, Rob and I both are in that situation. So we don't meet federal ozone standards. So yeah, we over the years, a lot of initiatives in place to electrify ground support equipment. And you'll probably see that at a lot of airports. Here at DFW, we're about 30 to 35% electrified on the airfield side. And then on the what we call at airports the land side, which is how we're moving you around the airport itself, we've actually got all of our bus fleet, which makes up about 91% of all of our fuel, our transportation fuel. The bus fleet all runs on compressed natural gas, and one of our new sustainability initiatives is transitioning. And we started this last August. All of our bus fuels and all that compressed natural gas will be sourced from landfill biogas, so methane capture from landfills. And that's a great opportunity. I know there's other airports doing that as well, but natural gas in terms of large buses that drive 100,000 miles a year, natural gas is still a good fit. But we are working, we're studying battery electric technologies for those large vehicles, because those are really the big fuel consumers. Your light duty car and truck makes up a very tiny fraction of your carbon footprint. So really, it's as these advancing battery technologies come online, you'll see these big vehicles like buses, they'll have really good, viable, high-range battery technologies. So, Rob, I'll let you weigh in.
Great, thanks. At LAX, we are transitioning rapidly on our airside buses to take possession of probably 20 electric buses replacing diesel buses within the next year and a half. And so that entire fleet will eventually have 30 to 40 electric buses on the airfield that are airport owned, moving passengers from remote gates to other places on the airport within a very short couple of years. On our airport-owned fleet side, light-duty passenger vehicles, as Chris said, you don't get a lot of bang for your buck. However, we're transitioning our Honda CNG-powered sedans to electric Bolts, and so we've taken delivery of dozens of those to replace aging sedans. And on our passenger bus fleet, that's CNG, that moves between the terminals and parking lots and other areas on the land side, that will be reduced over the years as our automated people mover comes online in 2025. And so we're transitioning slowly away from powered vehicles to more alternative fuel vehicles. On the ground service equipment side, the support equipment, we have more than 30% that are electrified now, and it will increase. And the real limit, or the real challenge, is to put in the electric infrastructure to support all of these vehicles and find the necessary funding for to help with the initial capital expense, because that's a big challenge. But the benefit is huge in areas where air quality is a big concern.
Well, thank you all so much. I really appreciate that. I learned a lot from you, and I hope that perhaps in the future we might be able to host your panel again and perhaps just focus on one area again, such as carbon today, where we could then talk about water or solid waste or social responsibility. And so I thank you so much for guest speaking for the Sustainability Management Association. And we just are so proud of our members and how they're managing sustainability. So thank you to all of our guests. We are a little bit over time, so thank you so much for staying around with us. And I wish you all a very good day. And for our guest speakers, I'll be sending you the video in a few hours. And I wish you all a good day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You did a great job. Thank you.